It would not have been possible to produce all of the sessions and content for Punchback Print and bring you all of this content for free without the help of our amazing sponsors. So without further ado, here is a quick word from one of them.
We value unique experiences. In an age where we're continuously engaging with one screen to another, time with print has become unique, exclusive, and valuable to the consumer. This is a great opportunity for brands to deliver premium associations with customers that are individual and stand out from the cluttered digital communications.
The product sold by printers has never been ink on paper. That has always been the facilitation medium. The product has always been enabling the communication of a set of ideas or information to alter the mindset of or educate its recipient. The truth today is that ink on paper, or indeed ink on anything, still carries out this function incredibly well. It is tactile, it stimulates multiple senses and thus memory retention. Its physicality allows it to connect with the recipient on a deeper instinctual level than digital communications. And if produced creatively and personalized, it can cut through the noise and engage the recipient more reliably and consistently than an email or social media post ever could. The challenge for the printer of today is how to make sure the facilitation medium of print can be produced as cost effectively, quickly, creatively, and profitably as possible. And this is where the latest automation and e-commerce technology can play a vital role in enabling print businesses to move from more analog approaches to business and production management to one where they can streamline these areas and achieve business growth as a result. So today, with our two sector experts, Anthony White and Graham Smith, welcome guys. Thank you very much for joining us. We will explore these critical trends, and hopefully you will take away a much deeper understanding of the role that automation technology can play in assisting your print business with increasing its efficiency, reducing its overheads, increasing its productivity, and ultimately how it can enable you to focus on building relationships with your clients and delivering value to them through creative consultancy and solving their communication and marketing challenges. So now to introduce our experts. With a decade of experience gained setting up and running a digital print division for one of the UK's largest independent commercial printers, Anthony joined the professional print team at Canon Europe in 2003, with responsibility for marketing software solutions. Working across Canon EMEA for over 15 years, Anthony now has responsibility for marketing strategy across production print, leading campaign and communications development. Graham has been in the print industry for more than 25 years, although he won't thank me for telling you that. He has a wide overview of the entire supply chain in his current role. Not only does he run and own Cyan Group and have a deep understanding of commercial print, his role as president of the British Promotional Merchandising Association and chairman of the Independent Print Industries Association gives him insight into key economic sectors as well. So now to kick things off, Anthony, can you tell me what the title of this session, Automation and Adaptability equals Resilience, really means to you?
Well, for me, having been in the industry similar to Graham now almost 30 years, I think resilience is more important now than it's ever been in all the time that I've been in the printing industry. Clearly, the market is facing challenges that it's never faced before with the COVID pandemic and the ongoing implications of that. Yes, that's creating opportunities. Where there are challenges, there are also opportunities. But it's really, really important that printers have the right mindset. I think going through this process, have the right positive attitude to be resilient. But also what we're seeing is in terms of how they can manage their businesses, going back to the new normal or having the new normal isn't an option anymore. You can't go back to how businesses were run in the past, even as little ago as 6 months. So it's very much looking to automate where possible. I think that's almost a necessity now in many print businesses, whether it's because staff are still on furlough, or whether it's just that working practices have changed to a point where manual work just isn't enough anymore. So whereas I think in the past automation has been something that is important, but maybe is a nice to have for many businesses, it's now being seen as a must have, and it's an area we're seeing certainly at Canon there's real focus, real interest, and significant investment being made. Also, I think from my perspective, that automation isn't just looking within the print business, it's also looking at the supply chain. It's looking at how you can automate those relationships with suppliers, but also reaching up to customers as well in terms of the value chain, and how particularly through e-commerce, you can extend the value chain to make your customers an integral part of that whole process.
Great, Anthony, that's a really important point. So Graham, to you, the same question from your perspective as a business owner in the graphic arts industry. What does the title of this session mean to you? Why is it important that we are discussing it today?
Well, I think that the important thing for me is what we've realized is the whole planet has had to do a Control-Alt-Delete type reset, sort of reassess what we're doing and why we're doing things. So for me, I love to challenge things, both for the how and the why, because unless you're actually doing one or the other, you're just changing things for the sake of change sake. We've been told, we've been enforced this change that has come on all of us are affected by, and there's never been a better time for us to challenge things and actually have a review of what we were doing and where we want to be going forward. I do believe there is a chance and an opportunity, a real opportunity for us to not only survive but thrive if we get these changes right. And I think the adaptability element of the title is really important, because efficiencies can be created and efficiencies can be modified by using automation. And every time there's an automation point, there's a less of a chance for duplication or an error to happen along the way of the process. But I think actually looking at how we do things in and around print is such a tried and tested and trusted media that if we can get this right by engaging print and the digital aspect together, I think we're on a winner. And I think that's the reality. Is if you know what our Prime Minister, which media did he use to send a message out to the country? It was print. And I think that speaks volumes in terms of the value we have in our industry. What we need to do is try and adapt ourselves to how we're going to take this forward for the next period or the next phase of our evolution.
Yeah, no, that's a really important point. I mean, just to come off the back of that, Graham, we in our incumbent Labour seat in Bristol, where I live, we recently saw the Liberal Democrats almost push them over the edge in the last election from a very, very, very low voter base. And they did that because they sent out a mass personalised print campaign to every home in Bristol in our area. So just print alone saw them shift their election demographics within one cycle. So it does prove the point. So if we move to the kind of first topic that I really get into with you guys, automation and e-commerce really are two vital areas of research and investigation for any print business to further strengthen their productivity, their cost efficiency, and the ease really with which customers can produce their services. And essentially, these areas of technology have seen their development driven by the need to strengthen print as a facilitation method for solving communication and marketing challenges, instead of seeing print as the product in itself. So Graham, can you give me your experience of how automation and e-commerce have really helped drive growth for Cyan Group directly?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think driving growth is a question mark on this, but driving relevance and actual being more needed as a service is probably more reliable. We've got clients in the pharmaceutical industry, and we've supported them for many, many years. Part of that service offering is patient support materials, which will go out to surgeries to promote the next campaign for vaccines and things like that are going through it. So one of the things that would be happening is our client, one of the pharma companies, would send out these packs, standard packs, to all the surgeries, and every surgery would get exactly the same. It's a standard pack. So if surgery A is the same as surgery B, that works well. But if surgery A is twice the size of surgery B, then there's going to be wastage. And one of the things we wanted to challenge is eliminating waste, both in time and money and environmental impact, because sustainable doesn't just mean, having a relevance ongoing, it's actually making sure that we're looking after the environment and the planet as well. So what we did is we basically introduced the idea of a web to print solution for this particular pharma company, for them to reach out to every single surgery, which they'd never been able to do before, to engage on a one-to-one basis and saying, basically, this is your pack, this is what you're going to get. And you can log in though, and basically drill down what you don't need to actually make sure that the bespoke package that is then delivered is 100% what you're after. And I think the reality is we looked at that campaign and it was sent out as an email because we're going digital now, and the uptake wasn't huge. So we quickly had a plan to engage with a direct mail campaign. So we sent out the letters to all the surgeries with a link to a AR trigger. So we were using still print as the trigger. So with a printed letter, and then embedded into the letter was an augmented reality why you're using this new service. So again, there was a really nice, unique engagement point for the surgeries to go, wow, this is a company that now is moving digital. Let's see what they're doing. So we engaged on it, downloaded the app, got the why to use or how to use video, and suddenly the engagement skyrocketed. The benefits for that, it gave the whole chain was an uptake in terms of confidence, in terms of competence, in terms of streamlining everything. But what we actually ended up for the client, ultimately at the end of the day, was a cost saving, because everything that they were going to be doing traditionally as a print run, volumes, were X. With everybody coming in and personalizing it, it dropped. So we were seeing a saving in terms of overall cost from the client, but we were also seeing efficiencies in everybody was having exactly what they want. So waste was massively reduced as well. And I think this is a great example of utilizing technology, but still having print as the absolute driver. So the email went out fine, but it was pretty much a very, very low engagement technique. We then got the direct mail out there with a bit of digital onto the augmented reality, which has driven to a web to print solution ultimately, which is normally used for business card personalization. And we just had these items on there so we could keep it consistent, professional, and actually the resulting effect was a massive uptake in confidence, but also the benefits in saving time and money all along the way. So I think that's a really good use of us being able to use automation to be adapting. We already had that software there in the background doing business cards, and what we've lifted it and translated it into is an environment which wasn't really available. And now we've got that as the standard format for us to be able to take this forward for other clients, and using that same client will come back time and time again for that. So it's just a good example of actually getting the legacy of a lock-in, but keeping printers at the heart of our business, because that's what's passionate to us.
Oh, that's fantastic. And actually, that brings to mind a quote I saw online yesterday from Albert Einstein, where he said, creativity is intelligence having fun. And, not to blow your head off too much there, Graham, but what you've described is creativity. What you've done is said, I have a singular customer challenge. I would like to increase the ability for my customer to engage with their target customer base. What resources do I have at my command and with the skills and the team I've got around me in order to solve that challenge? Yeah. Now, if you 10 years ago looked at what your actual traditional product was, you'd have never been able to solve that challenge for them. But when you approached that problem creatively and said, actually, what I'm out to do here is to break down the barriers using print, using digital data gathering, using these platforms, and then facilitating that campaign through print, you did incredibly well. So that kind of brings me to my next question for you, and that is, obviously that's how you use it within your business, but you also deal with a very large supply chain of print businesses that feed into Cyan Group. So how does automation and e-commerce influence your decision on which sector suppliers to work with?
It's definitely something that is becoming more and more relevant as part of our supplier selection scheme. We look for ease of use, convenience. A lot of the things, multiple touch points mean that actually that's an interaction that we are paying for. Every single touch point is an interaction we're paying with. So what I really want to do is mitigate and keep the line as transparent as possible, keep it as smooth as possible. And every time there's an engagement point that would have been there, the more it can be automated, the better. So do we need to be having a phone call from someone to tell us that there's a proof online or that it's going to be there? Of course not. That would be almost ridiculous. But yet these are things that used to happen and are still happening all the way through the supply chain. We should have a purchase order that follows the original quote, that follows the original estimate, that follows the original spec. All these sorts of touch points, making sure that we're 100% tidy at the end of the chain. And what it really should do is then the engagement points that we have, the humans should be engaging with it, the process, and saying, hang on a minute, I know you've ordered 20,000 of this, but is that really what you need? Because actually I noticed you did 20,000 3 months ago, and the month before that, and before that. Should we look at increasing the volume so that actually we're going to be buying more economically sound for you, Mr. Client? And suddenly they're going to see the engagement part of adding value. And that's really what we want to be doing. I don't want to be doing manual tasks all the time that are not adding value to either us or to the client or the supply chain. I want us to have our head up. And the head up moments for me is basically we're not bogged down with the transaction. We're actually heading up and trying to add value by looking at all the different options. So a supplier that is engaged also by putting their head up because they've got their automation, their ducks in line, then they're also going to find changes that say, actually, Graham, had you drop this down by a couple of mil, we might be able to do this, and then you'll be in line feeding for our spot UV, which actually is not going to cost us a bit, huge amount more. Is that something you'd like to, go back to your supplier? And if we can add value by not adding massive amounts of cost, of course they're going to be interested in that, and that makes us look good. The process is all about managing expectation. If our supply chain can help us look good, we in turn are going to look good to the clients, and the whole thing is a happy circle. And it is a cycle, and we want to engage our relationships. We, as a print management, traditional print management, know that we are firmly on the fence. We've got our suppliers on one side, clients on the other, and neither is more important than the other, because without one, you can't service the other. So we need to have great relationships with our supply chain as much as we need great relationships with our clients. And then the diversity and all the different relationships that you have in between. But that's then up to us then to add the value of working out who is the best supply chain partners to work with to maximize the opportunities for that particular client, which will be different every time.
Cool, thanks, mate. So, Anthony, this is such an important area of development for Canon with your own technology, such as Prisma software, your Cosmos systems integration platform, and even your partner solutions such as EFI Market Direct Suite. So, do you think it is feasible, having we've just listened to this from Graham? Do you think it's feasible for print service providers, especially SMEs, to increase their levels of in-house automation and indeed embrace e-commerce without it really being a trial by fire?
Yeah, definitely. I think in recent years, the cost and accessibility to particularly e-commerce software and multi-channel software has the barriers to entry have come down massively. I think the traditional business models and technology, you used to have a server solution that you would pay for up front. It was normally tens of thousands of pounds, and you really had to build an incredibly strong ROI that typically most print businesses didn't have at that time. What we've seen in recent years is that not only has the technology shifted across to cloud platforms, which makes it more agile, makes it more cost effective, but the business models have fundamentally changed as well. So there's a lower risk, there's lower initial levels of investment, and it becomes more of a progressive investment where you can dip your toe in the water, you can learn, and the risk is maybe 10% of what it would have been from a cost perspective. So again, building that ROI and building that proof case is much easier. So I think, had you asked me that question maybe 5-7 years ago, I would have said that for the SME market, it was a real challenge. It was a real leap of faith. And I think unless you had existing customers that were not going to work with you unless you could offer web to print, there wasn't enough incentive really to make that investment. I think now it's become almost the default for certainly for government tenders, for lots of contractual business in the B2B sector, that print providers have to offer that web to print or e-commerce solution in order to be competitive, to even make it onto the shortlist. So it's become much more of a necessity. I think in terms of addressing the trial by fire, I think if that decision can be made proactively, and it's a decision that can be made strategically, then you remove a lot of that pressure of having to try and maybe respond and create a solution on the fly. So I think if it's something that can be, as I say, planned, it can be structured, it can be done incrementally. And also I think it needs to be driven by a real business need. What is the reason to invest in web to print, in particular in e-commerce? Is it to free up salespeople, to add more value, to spend more time with customers? Probably particularly important right now, where end users are going through a period of massive uncertainty. Or is it better to look at sort of automating that process? Is it to streamline? Is it to drive efficiencies, as Graham was saying, to remove those bottlenecks within the organization? If there's a clear commercial driver, that I think very much helps. And also it helps when, certainly as Canon, when we're reaching out to customers and we're engaging with them, if that customer has a clear understanding of what they're trying to achieve, it becomes much easier to define the right solution, to find the right touch points, and also to help them market and sell that solution into those customers as well. That's important. And technology is one thing, but being able to use it to promote your business as a marketing tool is I would say arguably even more important than the technology choice. It's actually having the right business framework, the right mindset to drive business or to streamline the business that you have. And I think also, in my experience, before I joined Canon, even I was one of the first to use web to print with digital print many years ago. It was much more efficient to work with existing customers and where you understood their needs, you had an existing relationship, and you're then enhancing that relationship, you're refining that, you're improving it, you're able to extend that to new services and products through the medium of things like e-commerce, rather than try and pitch what may be a relatively new concept to you as a print provider to a customer for whom it's also quite a new learning curve. So again, I think there's what may sound like fairly obvious things that you can do. They're obvious in hindsight, but at the time maybe they're not so clear to those people, especially if you're on the back foot, if you feel that it's something you feel you have to make an investment in. And I think just because your competitors have done it doesn't mean you should be doing it by default. It might be right for them. You might have a particular niche or a particular vertical. You may have different requirements. So I don't think you should do it as a me too response, just because you see other people are doing it out in the market.
Yeah, and I really agree completely. I think from all of the advice, everything that we're talking about today, we all have worked in the print industry for a long time. I'm very much the baby of the three here today, despite my white hair. But the really important thing is that we're not being flippant about this advice. We know it's difficult. We know that it's a challenge to move these mindsets. But to just give you a very small example, I worked as the editor of Signlink magazine for 10 years. And this is something I'll come to Graham on actually later, because he's in the promotional merchandising sector as well. But, in the 1960s, the vast majority of sign makers were bending iron and neon to create their products. And then that's it. That's how they facilitated their product. Today, the vast majority of them are using wide format inkjet printers to produce large graphics and apply them from everything to bus stops to buses and vehicle wraps, window displays, and everything in between. So that's because they were very much a creative industry. So for them, when demand patterns shifted, when customer changes shifted, it was quite easy for them to jump and go, okay, signs is not really my business. Just making sure my customer has visual branding is my business. It doesn't matter how I facilitate that. So for them, the mindset was quite quick to make that jump. So what we're going through here for the commercial print industry, where the product and the method of producing that product is so close that print factories have just seen themselves in that light, and getting them to move is a big task. So we understand that. And Graham, just to come back to you on a quick fire question from earlier, is if you had, say, two customers, both within 5% of each other in terms of how nice they are to deal with, their ability to consult with you creatively, but one, as you described, was very sorted out and having that chain of automation, of being able to track everything, of being able to deal with them very easily, and the other being much less so. I mean, even though the one who's, say, less automated might be 5% more creative and nice to deal with, quite honestly, which one would you choose to work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a bit of a loaded question, isn't it, Brendan? Because actually the reality is we all, we're in a world where actually, we shouldn't be thinking we're product sellers we're actually solution providers, and actually we're offering our expertise to add value to whatever it is that the proposition we're selling. So there could be equal opportunities depending on the industries that they're in, that there could be more scope, or it could be quite a narrow field for the other client. So I think it's, whilst the obvious choice is you want the creative ones, you want the people who are going to add a bit of spice and a bit something different, because it keeps everyone's interest up. But I also think that's something that we should be doing. If we're doing our job properly by adding value, that's what we should be doing to any print or any job or any opportunity that's out there. And I know we'll come on to it later about the cross-selling opportunities, but cross-selling is a huge part of that. And just within the print hat on, there's so many opportunities there to add value in terms of the finishing that you're doing, the substrates, the ink, you know, even the printer choice that you use can give you a range of opportunities. And I think it's understanding your supply chain to that intimate level, and also making sure that the engagement level with the communications is absolutely right, because print traditionally, and apologies to if I'm going to upset some people, haven't been great at selling themselves. They're good at talking to each other, but they're not very good at selling their best opportunities. And I think this is where the opportunity of automation sometimes has sort of overruled the need for printers to talk and sell themselves better. The print management companies have come in to sort of try and fill in the gaps of those, but I'd love suppliers to tell us, oh, I've just got this new bit of kit which is going to give you this option, that option, something else, just to fill our brains with opportunities and enthusiasm and excitement. Because then going back to being creative, we can apply that and go back and try and sell their products. We're the unofficial sales force for a lot of these suppliers, the printers, and yet they're not great at engaging all the time with us. Some are better than others, and those perhaps get the lion's share of work because they are a bit more creative. But it's about making sure that once we've got those options, easy to deal with is always a massive benefit, and making sure that we're as streamlined as possible. So they know our proofing system, they know how we can do things, they know how we want to run our MIS, that we have to follow the quote in a certain area. Automation really helps with that, and it drives through making sure that the start of the job and the end of the job are all joined up. So for our ISOs, we need them to be joined up, and actually the more proactive suppliers who are engaging with automation have that, and it makes it much easier for us to deal with them.
Great, thank you. So Anthony, last quick fire question for you on this topic. This is happening right now in your customer base, isn't it? I mean, this isn't blue sky thinking. People are making this move to have automation, to have e-commerce within their businesses, but not for the sake of it, for the end goal of it, which is ultimately to free them up to have more time to deal creatively with their customers, like Graham has just explained.
Yeah.
So how far is this trend happening in your own customer base?
Oh, it's happening massively. I mean, I think a lot of it was interesting as Graham was talking. I was thinking that automation is almost invisible to the end customer. What it does do is it frees up the business owner or the salespeople to have those more creative discussions rather than worry about managing how the print is going to be produced. It's more about how you can add value, and I think that's absolutely critical. The printer doesn't see themselves as sitting at the end of the supply chain where all of the value has been kind of sucked out of the process before they get an opportunity to influence. I think Graham, made a very good point in terms of we're not very good as an industry collectively at promoting print to people outside of the industry. We're very good at talking about it within the industry, but I think absolutely the automation and e-commerce, they're not new. I mean, the technologies have been around 20-25 years. They're very mature in many senses. I think what we are seeing is that the solutions are becoming easier to use. They're easier to install. They're easier to manage. In reality, they are becoming easier to connect together as well. Although I think we need to be careful. We need to really not oversell that capability, but really look at how we build those building blocks. And I think it's a panacea to think that, or utopia to think that all print providers will have fully automated solutions and workflows within their business. I think hardly any ever do achieve that. Doesn't necessarily need to be an ambition. I think there's almost always manual intervention that is required or that is preferred at some point. I think another area that we're seeing a lot of focus on at the moment is automating finishing, maybe where people are investing in digital presses still, of course, and we're actually seeing a spike in demand right now. But particularly I've seen in the UK, I look after the whole of Europe, and in the UK particularly, we've seen a lot of interest from customers in terms of how they can streamline their finishing. So how they can take products, either if it's in line, off the press, automate finishing, potentially because of reduced manpower as well. They're looking for that inline finishing, or nearline finishing, where you're using JDF driven barcodes to then automatically program for things like business cards, the commodity print items. Again, how can you automate the finishing of that product so that you're speeding up the service and you're reducing the cost, you're driving more efficiency, and again, you're freeing up what was a manual task for that person to then be doing something else more creative or adding more value within the operation. So we're definitely seeing continued investment. As I said earlier, I think a lot of focus on e-commerce and web to print right now, and workflow automation is a continued area. I think the other point is that a lot of printers actually have the capability to automate already within their setup, and quite often that's a latent capability. They're not actually using the capabilities they have on their digital front ends and their digital presses to automate, even if it's just things through hot folders, just doing those simple routine jobs that can be done manually. But if you can automate, that again can save minutes, which adds up to hours over the course of a week, which adds up to hundreds and maybe thousands of pounds over the course of a year. And those are all cost savings, otherwise just come straight off the bottom line for most companies.
Yeah, and of course, if you're using those minutes, those hours, those days that build up, and instead of spending time doing manual administration tasks, but you're picking up the phone to that top 20% contact and having that extra conversation with them, you're not only saving money in that time, you're generating money in that time.
Yeah.
So before we move to, we'll move on to topic 2 now. So the next area for us to look at is the importance for printers to diversify their production and software tools at their disposal to then increase their adaptability and creative palette so they can deliver solutions to their customers' challenges more effectively. So Graham, to kick this one off with you, how have you managed this area in your own business and what benefits have come from it?
As I said, we're a big fan of changing things, but I don't want to change things for the sake of change. If we're seeing an opportunity in the marketplace that's actually going to be something that we want to adapt, then we'll explore it and thoroughly research it. I'm a big believer that there's actually a fine balance of being a jack of all trade and a master of none. So I want to make sure that if we are going to actually open up the opportunity of maybe a tangent, selling a new opportunity in, then it's something that we've researched thoroughly and actually gone through all the process and due diligence, making sure it's right for us, because as Anthony said, not everyone is the same and all businesses are different. It's got to be right for us. But I think if we are passionate enough, and I think that's a key word in these process of change, is don't just be doing it, it's because such and such is doing it, therefore I'm going to do it. That's not going to give you the desired results, because they're doing something else that's probably coming from inside the heart, which is adding a bit of passion into something to make sure you're going to learn and evaluate what is actually the right solution for you. So where we've used it and used it to our benefit is actually, we've got lots of different technologies, MISs, CRMs, proofing tools, accountancy, warehousing, promo side as well as the business. All of these different areas all require different bits of software. And as Anthony also said, not many of them are all joined up as much as we would like them to be, but we've had to invest time and resource to making sure that we know exactly the right one that is right for us at the moment. We've tried to future-proof ourselves, but that's very increasingly difficult, shall we say, with what's going on in the world, and the landscape is changing. However, what we've done is also made things that are a little bit, robust enough to actually survive changes and tweaks. So we're nimble enough to be able to make those adaptations and actually change for our benefit, ultimately, which will then result in our clients' benefit. So we're using it across the board. But I think I love technology, but it's got to be the right for it. I don't want to use it for the sake of using it. If it's going to save us time and streamline things, then I'm a massive fan of it. And we've got things both on the print and promotional side that are use different bits of software. I haven't found one yet that actually will allow us to do both. But I do think it's important that if you're traditionally on the print side and you want to explore the opportunities that promotional merchandise might be able to afford you, again, utilize the resources out there, either find people who are using it, why are they using, what are their benefits, and what are their target audience? Because I think it's really important that you don't just go, right, I'm going to sell mugs and t-shirts now. That's going to revolutionize our business. I'm going to get a little direct to print garment in there. I'm going to do it all, because it's not the same. There are nuances and very different processes, it's still branding. That's the thing that why we specialize in both, because it's branding. And if I wanted to be going into a client who was going to say, I would like some pads and some literature brochures, but also want some pens and hats and clothing, I don't want them to be speaking to two different suppliers. I want us to be the guy who's going to, or the company that's going to help them on both sides of the fence. So it makes sense that there's probably going to be another salesperson going in after there if I didn't offer both of those opportunities. But we started looking seriously at promotional back in the early 2000s with a view to actually getting under the skin of it, really finding out what is the structure and where is it for, because promotional merchandise is, again, another very, very established, huge market, huge opportunities. But again, you've got to be professional in your approach for everything that you're doing, equally as much as you are on print. So your knowledge may be there on print, but you need to have equal amount of knowledge on the promotional merchandise and the nuances that go there, and the supply chain, that how it works and how they engage and what the different variables are for that particular industry. They're not unsurmountable, far from it. They're very achievable. However, you've got to make sure you're engaging with the right people to be able to do that. And I would say BPMA, obviously a flag of the associations, are always a great place to start. But I would say, in the first instance, speak to a recognized distributor of promotional products, someone who's either a charter member or something like that, who will take the time to actually talk to you, and maybe they'll help the PSB to actually try and open the opportunities and see what they're actually trying to do it for. Because if they're doing it just to add a bit of bolt on and hopefully make a bit more money, that's not how you're constructively going to be doing it. You need to have a broader mindset, a business plan of systematically working through things with an end goal and target how you're going to get there. But I think technology across the board should be embraced wherever it's going to be adding value, but it's got to be right for yourself. And there's a lot of time investment in headspace, making sure that it all is going to fit with your business and where you want to take your business, because that's important.
Cool. And Anthony, now I'm just going to come over to you. Canon has a very diversified portfolio of both software and hardware solutions to assist PSPs with moving into areas of market growth, whether that's large format graphics, point of sale, or even fine art reproduction. I mean, anyone who will have been out to any of the trade shows will see just how varied and multidisciplinary your offering is. So from your experience, your customer base that is seeing growth and success, how important is it for printers to have a suite of solution that enables them to ultimately be more creative for their customers, and essentially when that customer rings up, be able to say yes?
Yeah, I think it's very important. But again, I think it starts with what as a print business are you good at? What can you offer, and then how can you grow your business around that core offering? And for me, a lot of the creativity that exists within print businesses is quite often hidden. I mean, a lot of print providers now have in-house design, good graphic design, layout capabilities. Quite often the value of that isn't recognized, and it isn't promoted, and it isn't sold. And if you've got that core graphic design capability, then that becomes a foundation you can build on with web to print, adding personalization, for example, then from personalization to add cross media or multi-channel. So you can quite quickly add value from that kind of creative basis. So I think that's, in some cases, I think we look at the print output, and then we actually forget all the value, or some of the value that could be added in that creative process up front. You're right in that we have at Canon, we're fortunate to have one of the widest portfolios probably in the industry across inkjet, toner, color, mono, etc. So one of the areas we focus on is how do we make that technology, again, easy to use. We've got software now that will support across inkjet and toner portfolio, so that you don't have that problem of having to have separate workflows for different output devices. One recent product innovation we have is around releasing some new COVID templates and icons, for example, so that where printers are looking to produce customer information, communication materials, for example, in response to requirements from end customers, we can now do that in poster format, small format, large format, from one piece of software. It's very intuitive. So that's just an example of where in the past probably you would have to have proprietary software driving different output systems. We're now looking at and are delivering much more integrated solutions where that enables you to unleash the creativity that's within the print business, cost effectively and efficiently as well. I think also in terms of creativity, again, focusing on the customers that you have, looking at adding new services, offering creative services. I think, as Graham said, print providers aren't always the best at promoting what they can do and what print can do for end users. So I think that hardly ever does one print company have 100% share of that end customer's wallet. So I think it's also looking at even quite basic things, looking at how you can use different media, how you can use different finishing techniques, how you can really amplify the power of print in that as a communication vehicle. And there are statistics out there from market research that demonstrates how powerful print can be as a communication vehicle. And then also maybe slightly sort of tangential to the main topic, but how do we as print providers promote what we do? You know, do we have case studies? Do we think to create case studies of where we've had successes? Do we shout about those and promote those? And do we then use those to find similar customers that would have a similar need that we can then meet? Do we have sample packs? Do we use direct mail, as Graham said? Do we use direct mail as a printer ourselves to promote what we can do with print? Are we being creative in the use of print? It's almost like eating your own dog food. Do we actually do that? And the most successful print providers do that, I think, and do demonstrate their creativity. Otherwise, it's quite often hidden from public view, and you find that a creative agency who maybe doesn't understand print will get that design work, will do the creative piece, and then the printer is again then a print is then reduced to a commodity product almost, where there's price sensitivity, there's time sensitivity, and that added value, that creativity isn't encouraged to flourish, let's say. So I think that's one key area where we can help promote creativity from print providers to end customers, and I think it's really an opportunity that we should be focusing on now, particularly now when we understand print, we understand how to design for print, we understand how print can be used to stimulate the senses, how we can be used, as Graham said, in multi-channel campaigns, how it can be used as a signpost. We know email and we know digital communications are to a penny now. You know, there's digital fatigue out there. The time is really, really right for print to have that resurgence almost, not that it ever went away, but to demonstrate what we can do creatively with print, not to compete necessarily with digital communication channels, but to work alongside them, to complement them, and to amplify them.
Yeah, as the name of this conference says, it's time for us to punch back.
Yes.
So actually, that just reminds me quickly of a funny story about one of your industry peers, who shall remain completely nameless, at a conference about 10 years ago, who, to make the exact same point that you were making even then, was saying got 3 cans of cat food out on the dais, one that was really expensive, one that was mid-brand, and one that was so cheap that you probably wouldn't even want to feed it to your cat, and made the point that the cat food in all 3, he knows for a fact, because he had a friend in the industry, are the same cat food. And he said, the point is, you as the printer are the wrapping around this cat food. You can sell this one for £10 a can. You can sell this one for 4, and this one is 2. It's the same cat food. It's the wrapping around that cat food that makes the difference. He then proceeded to open all 3 and eat them to make his point. So those in the know who are there will know what I'm talking about and laugh. So Graham, just to come back to you now on this, the last part of this segment, is with your experience across promotional merchandise and print, large format print, and indeed commercial print, how important is it, do you think, for PSPs not to just be a one-trick pony, to have a diversity of hardware solutions that they can call on, like you said earlier, so that when you're speaking to them, they can say to you, hey, look, we've got this device. Have you thought about this thing? We can do this creative embellishment for you. We can do this clever facet to this print campaign. How important is that?
It's hugely important to me, and I think it should be recognised that playing to our strengths is really, really important. And I think people will see whether you're being disingenuous, whether you're actually not really talking with confidence about something, or whether it's something that you are really passionate about and have the expertise to take this forward. Because ultimately that's what we want as consumers or purchasers of the print. We want to know that it's in good hands, it's in safe hands. And so for printers to engage in new ideas, I think it's great. I think they need to properly be behind it though, and actually properly support it. I think if we look at the triangle has changed. It used to be the triangle of price, delivery, and quality, and all those three were given, and you could sort of move that triangle around, you know, customize one off the other, and that was your sort of unique selling point. I think reality now is we've got to add extra points on there. Those are all givens now. That's done. What we need now is creativity, as Anthony was saying earlier, and creativity could be innovation. I love that, you know, people being innovative. You've done that, but why don't we do this? And then the passion starts coming through, and then we start layering on top, and suddenly they're adding value with different services, with different finishing, with different substrates. It's going to cost a little bit more, but my God, it's going to have a bigger impact, and it's going to be stand up. It's going to be jumping out, which is what we want. If we can't be passionate about print and the print we're selling, who's going to be passionate? Is it going to be the recipient? Because if you're not getting behind it and getting excited about it, who is? And I think the other thing that we need to do is making sure that it's sustainable. And sustainable means also from a print management perspective, I want it to be sustainable. I want the printers to be selling to us at a price that is also sustainable. This race to the bottom idea of having everything on a price matrix that's going to be dropping down, well, I'll drop it down below cost or in contributions. I've got no interest in that, because that is actually underselling our own industry. Why would we undersell our industry? Why would we devalue what we are so passionate at all in this industry for? Print is an excellent commodity. It shouldn't be a race to the bottom. It should be shouting it loud and proud. And I think you've got the expertise, the passion, the energy, the skill set to expand your services out there, then absolutely go for it. You'll get full support from all those behind, because you're going to be genuine, you're going to be passionate, and there will always be someone out there. But make sure you really drive that forward, making sure that the price, the quality, and the turnaround times, they're given now. That's done. That's not a unique selling point. But I don't want the price to be anything other than sustainable and actually moving that forward. And that sustainable also means environmental. Are we checking out? Why are we bubble wrapping everything? Why are we doing a thing? If the product needs it and there's an environmental alternative, we should be encouraging that, certainly as an option, if not in the very near future as an absolute given. So those are sort of the areas. And I think, yeah, as you can see, my words per minute increases as I get more and more passionate. But I love this industry we're in. And I just want us to crave the desire, the absolute standards that go through the roof. And I think that's the one thing that I've learned with working with the trade associations, both on print and promotional, is we're massive ambassadors of print and passion. And once you really explore what's behind it, you've got to get passionate about it. You've got to be really selling the benefits of what we're doing. Because if you're not passionate, who else is going to be? So massive high fives for everyone who gets involved.
Cool. And Anthony, on the last part of this topic question before we move on to the next, it's really a quick fire one to you, is it's back to this issue of adaptability. How fundamentally does making sure in your operation that whether it's through a trade printer or whether you have that technology in house, how does just increasing your access to in this part of the topic, hardware joined to software, increase your adaptability?
I think it gives you the versatility to deliver what your customers need and to adapt with their changing requirements. And I don't think, in particularly now, I don't think it matters 100% whether that is completely in-house. I think we're in a period now where it's okay to collaborate. It's okay to kind of work together with other print providers, maybe people you would traditionally even have seen as competitors. So I think if you need to be focusing on the service that you can deliver to customers, and then how you deliver that through, as we've been talking about, the integrated workflows and the automation and having the right kit, that should be invisible to the end consumer, the end customer. So yes, I think it's important that you have versatile technology, that you understand how you can adapt the technology that you have, how you can utilize it fully. And again, whether that's down to what finishing options you can offer and you want to offer. And again, I don't think you should be a jack of all trades. That doesn't mean you should be a jack of all trades. You need to focus on what your strengths are. You need to be true to the values that you have as a provider. If you try and do everything, you will probably fail. But the versatility of the digital technology that's available now is incredible. And in most cases, we're only utilizing a small percentage of the capabilities that that technology has. So I don't necessarily think over investment is a good thing. I think it's making the right investment. I think it's typical sort of 80-20 rule, that you have the kit to do 80% of what is needed, and then you flex that 20%, maybe you outsource it, or you look at a creative way of fulfilling that demand, or even adapting the demand that you can't fulfill. I think, again, I think Graham touched on this in terms of, you can go back to a customer and say, well, why do you actually want it done this way? If you did it slightly differently, we could deliver a better result for less money, because it would actually, you don't say to the customer, it will fit on our technology, but you know that it will, and you can actually influence and educate and advise and coach almost the customer's needs, not to manipulate them, but just to enable you to deliver that end product or that service yourself, cost effectively, as Graham has emphasized a number of times, doing it in a sustainable way, not just trying to be the lowest cost provider all the time to win the business, because that isn't good for the industry, it's not good for anybody, and ultimately it's not good for the customer.
Yeah. So I mean, ultimately, I think what we're taking away from this is, with the two first building blocks that we've come up with, is trying to get the industry, or more people within our industry, to move from a mindset where they invest in technology and build a business just based on having that piece of kit in house, to actually going, where is the demand? What are the problems that my main customer base and demographics are facing? And then using technology to service that demand, and building their business around market demand and problem solving, not around, I've bought a piece of kit, it's in the corner, oh my God, I need to fill it. So before now we move on to the very last section, building on these first two blocks of how printers can improve their business efficiency, productivity, and creative capabilities, it's important to explore that then the whole point is that it frees up the print business or owner manager to move from being a producer of print to one that is highly adaptable and enables them to become a creative solver of communication and marketing challenges through the use of print, which is an important distinction. So Graham, why do you think this is an important concept? I mean, surely printers sell print, don't they?
Yeah, they do, but they're selling, again, going back to that solution provider. It's the what is the journey of the message? So if we think whether print could be ultimately loads of different things, it could be a marketing message, it could be a marketing piece, or it could be a functional, operational piece, or it could be a raising awareness for anything. I think that whatever the journey is of that print piece, it's important for the printer to try and understand what is that journey going to be. So what we don't want to be doing is, if it's going to be written on, is this job going to be written on, or then we might not put it on a different substrate, or there could be a finishing, a tear off. It could be anything that you need it to be. It's just understanding the whole concept of what the journey of the print piece needs to be, because print is integral to a lot of these marketing campaigns. The marketing mix has seen, I think, a little bit of a downturn in terms of the awareness from the agency world as to what the benefits of print can be. So they're getting pushed down the priority list. But actually, time and time again, it keeps coming around the full circle. And when people buy into print and understand the benefits, and they've really seen what the tangible impact it can have on the return on investment, people understand that it's got to be there. But it's got to be personalized for the need. It's got to be relevant. It's got to be ideally specific to making sure that it's going to add value. Let's not do stuff for the sake of doing it. That doesn't work. We've got to be challenging things in a positive way, because actually, ultimately, it will come back. The more relevant and the more specific and the more targeted print can be, we can then lift our head up as a business owner and say, how am I going to add value? How am I going to get this noticed? Their bullet point is actually something that could do with really highlighting. And why don't we just use a spot UV on that? Or why don't we raise the ink? Or why don't we change a special color, or a fluorescent, or a thermochromatic inks? There's all sorts of creative world out there that we just get so blindsided by just going function, job, delivery, invoice, next, function, let's just add a bit of value. And yes, there's not going to be opportunities where it's not all the time to be able to add these things, but I think creativity and innovation is amongst us all. And those who invest their time and have got the processes organized so they can lift their head up a little bit and be a bit more creative will see the biggest returns. And I think particularly now more than ever, there's going to be challenges on budgets. There's going to be challenges in time that our clients have had, because ultimately they may have had a team 3, 5, 10, 30, whatever. Realistically, a lot of those teams are going to be hit hard, so that people are going to be doing multitasking now. They're going to be delivering on having to do more for less. And ultimately, that's our job. Well, then we need to come into our own. Print needs to really be that voice, that added value that can take the message forward, be specific. Let's be personalized. Let's get it a bit of investment on that time, getting the data right, so that when it comes on that amazing looking print, the envelope's going to stand out. How many people, see an envelope just as part of it and doesn't get noticed? Well, let's make our envelope stand out. Be passionate about all we're doing and think of the impact, think of the journey, because then we can add real value that something's going to be lifted from the drudgery of everything else that's been seen. And I think if we add value, print can really carve through that, make it specific, make it targeted, make it relevant, and we'll add value without having to be at the compromise of costs or detriment to the print industry. We can really, this is our time now to shine, and I think we've got to just grab the bull by the horns and get out there and do it.
Yeah. So as we move to towards the end of the session now, actually, Graham, what you made me think about there is this is also happening at one stage higher in the supply chain between the supplier and manufacturer, the OEM, and actually the printer. I like to play a little game at trade shows where I pretend to be a printer and I walk on to different stands and I just want to see what they're going to do, how they're going to sell to me, how the qualification process takes. I just find it really interesting. And 5 or 6 years ago, still, I can pretty much say every single supplier OEM I would walk onto would go with the first question out of their mouths would be, okay, how many sheets do you need to hit per minute? What cost click do you need to hit? What ink do you want to use? So using those type of questions. At one of the last shows I went to before lockdown, which was Simon Digital UK, it just happened to be the Canon stand, quite honestly, walked on, banner above me, fuel emotion with print. Sales guy comes towards me and I think, okay, this is going to be interesting. And his first question out of the gates was not, what do you want to hit per minute? Or do you want flatbed? Or do you want inkjet? Or do you want toner? The first question out was, from your biggest customers that you're dealing with at the moment, let's say your biggest one, what do you think the challenges are they're really facing? What's their problem? And I then went, I had to think quickly because I was lying at this point and go, do you know what? I'm actually not a printer, but thanks very much for that question. So it proves the point. This is happening all the way up the supply chain. That is exactly the right question to ask of the printer. What is the biggest challenge facing your biggest customer right now? Let's find out what we've got here that can help inspire you and solve it, not just sell you another box, essentially. So Anthony, that does bring me to you as we move to round off the session. You and the team at Canon work with an increasing number of print service providers that are making this transition we've been discussing over the last hour. Do you think it is a realistic prospect that every print business, and what wider support mechanisms do you have in place at Canon to support this transition?
Yeah, I think it's realistic that every printer moves in the right direction. I think in terms, it doesn't, what we're not saying is every printer should become this sort of full-blown marketing services provider, expert in cross media, particularly on day one. I think that's unrealistic, and I think that's sometimes the message that is received within the industry, and I think that isn't practical, that isn't realistic. But I think certainly to think about how printers can speak the language of their customers. As you said, coming onto the Canon stand, I'm pleased you had that experience. That salesperson is looking at how we can add value for you. That's what, again, print providers need to be doing with their customers. So if they're talking to a marketing person, they're talking about marketing return on investment. They're talking the language that a marketeer would use, which is quite often jargonistic. And there is like in print, we have our own jargon. In marketing, they have lots of constantly changing jargon. So it's to use terms like multi-channel, not cross-media. Maybe white space marketing rather than sort of transactional or transformational. So I think there's an opportunity there to communicate more effectively just by using the right language and coming at the conversation from the customer's perspective. We've just launched a new business development program called Canon Ascent, which is nothing to do really with technology. It's nothing to do with the nuts and bolts of the business. It's very much around the soft skills. It's interesting. Graham was talking about building a brand earlier. We're running workshops. We've got mentoring. We've actually got over 40 articles on our webpage, which are freely available, about how to build a brand, how to listen to customers, how to engage. There are things like how to sell web to print and how to build on some of the topics we've been talking about. but it's very much again building that educational process and awareness process, and helping customers to become better at being advocates of print and better at being able to promote print. So I think if I don't think there is evidence that if printers don't adapt and they don't evolve and they don't move with the times, and they're not I don't want to use proactive again, but they're not kind of defining the vision for going forward, then it's being defined for them, and that's not a good place to be. That's back to that trial by fire that we mentioned at the start of the conversation. That's somewhere you don't want to be. So it's in terms of how can we as Canon, we take it very seriously. How can we help our customers to become better at communicating and selling what they do? And sometimes that is marketing. That is maybe collaborating. That's using our marketing resources to work with the marketing or the sales teams in our customers and buddying up. And then also encouraging peer-to-peer sharing, networking. That's an increasingly important, I think, value add and role that we see as a vendor or as a partner. I would say partner rather than vendor into the industry, because we have those contacts. I have those contacts personally across Europe, where I would like to think, that if Graham was a customer of ours and was looking at getting into a new market, I would know somebody that had already done that in maybe in Belgium, maybe in France, maybe in Italy, that I could help him, and we could make those connections. So I think I see the role as, yes, still providing good technology and the right technology and being, a good technology provider, but it's very much more now, I think, about, particularly in these present times, about how we can collaborate with our customers, how we can build that win-win scenario, so that we can expand the share of print that is I'm passionate about, Graham's passionate about, I know you are, Brendan, as well, that we can get that across and convey that in a way that's going to help drive our customers' businesses forward.
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of the session. Thank you both very much for your time today. And I think the really key takeaway that we've worked through is increase automation in your business, how you can and where you can. It will make a difference. Increase the adaptability of your business by using that software and automation, increasing your hardware in terms of not focusing on it as the solution in itself, but in order to solve those challenges that are further down the supply chain. You do those two things, again, focusing on the fact that actually the production of print is not your product. Solving your customers' problems is your product. What that will then make you is resilient for the future. We have all been through an incredibly difficult few months. We have more difficult months to come. But if you can get those two things in place and at least think about them, it's all about increasing that resilience, so that as the market changes, as demand profiles change, as your customers face new problems, you can go with them and adapt quicker. So that's it for today. Thank you very much to Canon for helping us organize and hosting this. Thank you to Graham for being an excellent panelist. Thank you to Anthony for being an excellent panelist. I hope you all stay safe and well, and we will see you next time.